to be joined by Chris Zimmerman, design director, is that correct?
Development director.
Development director, excuse me. Over at Sucker Punch here, we're going to talk about Infamous Second Son. I just had some hands-on time.
Yeah.
Yay, Infamous. It's been a franchise I've always been very affectionate about.
Yeah.
It's really neat to see it like this. Obviously, this is your first outing on the PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
What is sort of the most significant thing that you're going to play with in the game that kind of makes it a next-gen experience?
Well, let's see, the controller, obviously, but I think the thing that's going to be most obvious to everyone at the start is just how spectacular the game looks. You know, there are lots of things that we can do with the PlayStation 4, which is awesome, that we never could have gotten away with on the PlayStation 3, whether it's the weather effects, whether it's wet streets and real-time reflections, whether, you can tell I'm the development director at this point, can't you? Whether it's having, 150,000 particles flying around the screen at the same time. We never could have gotten away with that the last time. It really gives you a richer experience as a player.
But also, I mean, going back to the original Infamous,
yeah.
It was an attractive game, but it really was that gameplay, both
yeah.
the open world and kind of the ease with which you could traverse the environment.
Right.
How have you been able to sort of tweak the gameplay or expand the gameplay because you do have a lot more power under the hood?
Well, it helps us really adapt where you're going and how you move through the environment, because we can actually track the actual physics of the environment. So when you play with the movement in the game, whether it's the smoke dash that we've been showing a lot of, that actually is based on the physics of the game. We can actually analyze it in real time and have you move over things or through things. Again, it would have been hard for us to do that. We just didn't have enough processing power to do that on the PS3.
Obviously, things fall apart in the game as well, and I can see there's a temptation. Let's make everything destructible. Let's have a much bigger map, because you can. But what's the process of trying to find that sweet spot of balance so you can impress the player by having new shiny things and bigger things, but not make it so much so that it actually isn't fun to play?
Absolutely, and for us, I think part of it was branding. Really, when you look in the game, a lot of the stuff that's destructible has been put there. It's been added on to Seattle. Seattle's been kind of turned into an armed camp by this government agency that's trying to track down all the people with superpowers. And their stuff tends to be destructible. So as a player, it's very predictable. When you look through the city, if you see stuff that has this sort of gray and yellow branding on it, you know you're going to be able to knock that down. And if one of the bad guys is dumb enough to stand on top, well, that's the easiest way to take him out.
Obviously, it being an Infamous game, you can be a good guy.
Yeah.
You can be far less than a good guy.
Yeah.
How have you started to play with that? Obviously, that kind of binary good-bad, you guys were one of the first ones out of the gate doing that. It is a fairly unremarkable aspect in a lot of games out there. Are you trying to change it up?
Well, we're not really ready to talk about that quite yet. So it's absolutely part of the franchise. It's one of the things that makes an Infamous game, but we're not quite to the part where we are ready to talk about that in detail.
So I avoid getting that answer one more time. Let's talk about sort of what the story and the setting is that you guys are comfortable talking about.
Okay, so the game takes place in Seattle. It's 7 years after the events of Infamous 1, Infamous 2. They're kind of part of the story of the world, but you don't really need to know any of the details from Infamous 1, Infamous 2 to play this game. So in this game, Delson Rowe, our hero, lives in a world where conduits are feared. They caused a lot of trouble during Infamous 1 and Infamous 2, and the reaction of the people has been to create this agency to control them. Well, near the beginning of the game, Delson discovers that he's one of those people. He's something that he's been taught to fear. And he has to come to terms with that. He has grown up thinking that conduits were dangerous, conduits were evil, conduits, people with superpowers, were something to be feared. And now he discovers he's one of them. So his reaction to that, his brother's reaction to that, Reggie, his older brother, and the reaction of all the people around him really starts to shape the story. It's something that you can imagine going through. It would be hard to come to terms with something like that.
And I'm correct that Delson is Native American.
He is, yeah.
And I mean, are you guys sort of, I can start to see that there's some interesting subtext you might be playing with, sort of the anxiety of the other that clearly was at the foundation of Manifest Destiny. Yeah,
there is. And it becomes more of kind of a backdrop to the game. The game's not about Delson being Native American. He's an American, first of all, right? And it informs who he is, but it doesn't define who he is. So it's not really a game about Delson being a Native American and the DUP not. It's more about this just being part of his background. So it comes across in a lot of the things he does, but it's not kind of a foreground thing for him.
And we've seen a lot of the smoke powers, but there are other powers that he can pick up. That's quite new to the series.
It is, yeah. The Infamous series was all about electricity. One of the things we wanted to do this time around was to give you some more things to play with. You know, the fun thing about a superhero game is all the powers, right? So we wanted to increase the palette. We wanted to give you more to do. So we've shown smoke. We've kind of teased a little bit of neon. You'll be seeing a little bit more of that in days to come. And I don't think it stops there. I think there's more after that as well. So as a player, you get to experience a bunch of different play styles as you move from power set to power set.
And is the idea that once you acquire power, you can always use it, assuming that you have the resources for it? There's some games that offer you a lot of powers and say, yes, but you can only use that there, or you can only use that one there.
Yeah, no, it's all very open in the game. The game's about freedom, right? I mean, freedom of movement and freedom of choice and how you're going to use the powers, how you're going to approach every situation. It's not a game where you're just playing through a sequence we've designed. It's a game where you're really taking control of the whole experience, and that's true for your powers as well.
That must present some big challenges for you guys,
yeah,
because you have to allow for that to be possible at any point.
It's hard because I think people like that. People really like that about a game like Infamous, where it's got this open feel to it, and yet it has this really high quality linear experience at the same time. And that's a challenge because the players aren't predictable. We don't even know what power set they're going to be using when they play a particular mission, and yet we have to provide this really AAA experience for them. It is a challenge, but you know, we've had 3 games to practice now, so we're getting, I think, okay at it.
I think you guys are getting there too. The game is not at launch, but it's within the launch window?
Yep, that's right, first quarter.
All right, well, it was an absolute pleasure having a talk. I can't wait to play the game.
Me too.
All right.